Hi, everyone. Welcome to the October 2021 Compassion Chat. My name is Susan Marshall. I am the author of Mom's Gone Missing, When a Parent's Changing Life Upends Yours. No kidding. We'll talk about that this evening as we do so often. And also your host for Compassion Chats. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 o'clock Central. And our mission here is really to provide a comfortable, casual environment where caregivers can come and meet resources from names we all know and would sometimes maybe reach out to, but we don't know how. So we bring individuals who represent those organizations, but more importantly, they come to us with a heart for caregivers and the families, as well as incredible knowledge about diseases of Alzheimer's and dementia. So that's our mission here, as I mentioned, the fourth Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. Central. I am delighted to tell you this evening, our guest is Jennifer Harters. Jennifer is a dementia care specialist with the Aging and Disability Resources Center of Waukesha County. And I got all that right. Cool. Jennifer has a long history in this work. She is well known and highly regarded. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Terrific. We love to start our chats knowing a little bit about the individual who's joining us. Can you give us a little bit of a brief summary of your story and how you came to do this important work?
I've been doing this a long time. I'm not going to totally give away how long I've been doing this. I really kind of fell into social work in college, started with, another degree and kind of fell into social work and really felt like I found my heart. And then it wasn't until really looking at field placement that I started working with older adults. It certainly wasn't my intention. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with my social work degree, but the minute that I started working with older adults, at that point in time, I was working in long-term care, assisted living, independent living kind of complex, and just, again, immediately found love and really gravitated towards people living with dementia and their caregivers. So that's really all I've done my entire career is work with people living with dementia and their loved ones. I have been fortunate enough to work with people in kind of a variety of settings. I've worked, like I said, in long-term care, assisted living. For a while, I worked in Waukesha County doing family care, so helping really people remain in their homes as long as possible, get connected to services. I worked for the Alzheimer's Association for a while as an outreach coordinator in Waukesha County. Really enjoyed that work. And again, meeting with family members, persons living with dementia, persons concerned about their memory in the community to help sometimes hold their hand, sometimes just provide that resource or that touch point to get them the information that they needed to kind of take one step at a time. And for about 2.5 years, I've been at the Aging and Disability Resource Center doing a lot of what I did at the Alzheimer's Association. Again, my primary role is to connect with people living with dementia or individuals concerned about their memory and their families. Again, to provide that information, disease process information, community resources. Our goal at the ADRC really is to help people remain as independent as they can be for as long as they can be, and work with dementia-friendly communities and other partners in the community, as well as helping my colleagues at the ADRC understand dementia and really provide what we call dementia capable a service or care from an ADRC standpoint.
I really appreciate you saying that, Jennifer, because the ADRC provides a waterfront of services for all kinds of aging and disability needs within families. Do you see any patterns with regard to the calls you get? One of the questions I get a lot and thought a lot myself about as a caregiver is, I don't know who to call. If my parent, my mom, in this case, she was long distance from me, but if But if there's a parent that knows, or an individual, forget parent, an individual who knows they're beginning to fail, most of the time the initial reaction is denial, right? I'm tired, I've had a long week, I'm getting older, blah, 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 blah. Do those individuals tend to reach out? Or is it more often someone who notices that and is concerned and says, hey, I got to start putting together some information about this?
That's a great question, Susan. One of the services that we provide, that the dementia care specialists actually across the state of Wisconsin provide, are memory screens, which are an opportunity. It's a very quick screen. It's not an assessment. It's a screen for individuals who might be concerned about their memory. And we typically hold them in the community. We hold them, I do most of mine at libraries or senior centers. And it's an opportunity for individuals to schedule an appointment to come in and do a quick 5-minute, 15-minute, I schedule a half-an-hour appointment because usually there's a lot of questions, but we run through the screen and then we talk about brain health. We talk about what might be causing the changes that they're seeing. We talk about what's normal aging changes versus what might be of concern. And often I'm telling those folks to contact their primary care physician and schedule an appointment to talk about what they're seeing or what they're experiencing. So from that standpoint, I get a lot of people who are concerned. From just calling the ADRC or just calling me, mostly those are concerned neighbors or concerned family members, or occasionally it is, I'm concerned, but most of those calls are from concerned individuals and loved ones. Occasionally I'll get a call from a person who is just recently diagnosed, who is interested in getting more information about, what their next steps would be. But yeah, most of the time when I'm getting a call, it's not from that person directly.
And then how do you counsel those people, right? Because there's the Budinsky factor, right? I noticed and I call now. What would you advise? How would you advise someone to approach the individual they're concerned about with whatever information you happen to provide to them?
Yeah, so if the person that they're concerned about has not yet been diagnosed, again, I highly encourage that they seek that assessment. Primary care physician is the first point. And I really talk to people about the fact that if somebody's having some cognitive changes or some memory changes or even mood or behavior changes, we can't assume that it's something that is irreversible and progressive. There are lots of medical reasons why people have changes in their cognition. There's lots of medical reasons why people have dementia symptoms. So I encourage caregivers or those concerned individuals to come at it from that standpoint. Mom, I talked to the social worker and she said that there's lots of reasons why someone could have the changes you're experiencing. I really think it's time to go see your doctor. So from that standpoint, from that assessment, really trying to come at it from the standpoint of there's so many things that could be.
Absolutely. And in fact, I've heard from a lot of people lately that a UTI, urinary tract infection, can be huge in terms of creating confusion and weakness and those kinds of things, along with dehydration.
Yes. Dehydration, nutritional disorders, vitamin deficiency, B12 deficiency is a big one. Depression can look like dementia. Thyroid problems. I mean, there's just so many, Susan. There's so many things that really could be going on. But yeah, the urinary tract infection is huge. And even for people who have dementia, it really can look like a very significant, quick onset of changes. So even with that, even if that person's already been diagnosed, I still really encourage that individual be seen by a doctor for assessment.
That's great. Do people who come to you or come to a memory screen make an appointment do they ask you to intervene with the doctor to be a sounding board perhaps, or is that where you kind of draw a boundary?
So, and actually a really good question too. So part of the process with doing a memory screen is, especially if the memory screen is what we call abnormal, I talk to that person about providing that screen to the physician. And I will offer even to mail it directly to their physician. Of course, I get a signed release, and I will mail it directly to them or to the doctor for that discussion. Sometimes people take me up on that. Sometimes they don't. At bare minimum, what I do is provide them with a copy. And I explain, here's what your next steps should be, or here's what your next steps that you might want your next steps to be. If I mail that screen to the physician, I send a cover letter explaining what it is, what the concerns are, what's a normal screen versus, why is this a concern? And encourage them then to talk about that screen to their patient. So yeah, that's part of the process.
That's great. 5 years ago, when I was dealing with this, and even longer ago with Dad, physicians really didn't know a lot about either dementia or Alzheimer's. And there are so many flavors, right, of dementia. I'm assuming that today they're far more aware and attuned. So I'm hoping that that's true. And yet now we've just gone through a year and a half, close to 2 years with COVID, which I have to believe or suspect that dementia kind of got pushed aside, and the fear continued to build. And as you said, prior to getting on the call, when we were just chatting, it seems like things have happened rapidly when perhaps they haven't because we've been distracted. What's your sense of that?
So I do think that physicians are getting better at recognizing. I think the problem is there are so many different types of dementia that sometimes people just get diagnosed with dementia without really finding out what type of dementia they have, which is important for a number of reasons. Medications can be very counterproductive, certain medications for certain types of dementia. So it's important to know that type. So what we're seeing is if a person receives a diagnosis and it's from a primary care physician, a primary care physician is more inclined to just diagnose dementia versus, that specific type. So individuals that go to kind of a diagnostic, that diagnostic setting tend to get more of the specific type of dementia. So I do see that occurring. I still, unfortunately, see a couple of things that are concerning. One, that individuals still are not always being told that they have the diagnosis, which is concerning. The other thing is that I lost my train of thought. Is that they're being told that they have a diagnosis and then they're not referred on to here's where you can get some more information. So a doctor may be better at diagnosing or more forthcoming with diagnosing, but connecting to those resources, connecting to the Aging and Disability Resource Center, who can provide additional information and support, connecting to the Alzheimer's Association, who can provide additional information and support. I often get calls, unfortunately, from community members, from family members, from individuals who have just received a diagnosis, and they will say, I just got a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and I don't know what to do. I don't know what my next step should be. And those are the fortunate cases, right? Those are the people that know to reach out. What happens to all those folks that don't reach out, that don't get connected? That's concerning to me. And those are the individuals that end up in crisis.
Absolutely. At what point should a caregiver or a family of someone that they're concerned about look for help from a neurologist?
I always encourage people to start with their primary care physician, especially if it's somebody who has a long history. So that with that person, that is where I encourage people start. However, if they've already seen their primary care physician, and unfortunately I hear this too, that the primary care physician makes a comment about, oh, you're just getting older, or, we hear that. Then I will encourage them to go to a neurologist or to a diagnostic clinic for further assessment. Again, because there could be so many things going on, and really to get that definitive diagnosis. Yeah. So that's kind of when that happens. Or if they get a diagnosis that they are not necessarily happy or not happy, but they're not comfortable with, they feel like there's more going on. I have a family that I've been working with for a while, and mom was given a dementia diagnosis, and I called for a follow-up in the last couple of weeks, and I was talking to the daughter-in-law, and she said, you know what, we went and saw another neurologist, and my mother-in-law has now been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And she said to me, it all makes sense now. All of the behaviors, all of the things we were seeing didn't fit what we were being told before, but now it all makes sense. And now we have this family that was struggling to put these pieces together and figure out what's going on, who now know what's going on. They've developed some effective strategies, and they feel like they're in a place where, okay, we got this now. Whereas before, nothing was making sense, and everything they were trying felt like it wasn't working.
So very important. This is such a tender, sensitive, uncomfortable thing for everyone. The individual who's struggling, the family members, the communities that surround. One of the things that we talked a lot about here each month is taking good notes. And that can even feel like making book on somebody, right? And we had a guy months ago who said, you know what, I'm not going to incarcerate my dad because he makes mistakes. So this idea that if we even consider an assisted living community, a senior community, rather than the individual's home, that's somehow incarceration. It's like, wait a minute, but there's still that stigma, right? And there's a fear as a caregiver myself, it's a fear of doing the wrong thing. It's a fear of saying the wrong thing. It's a fear of not acting quickly enough, rushing to judgment. How do you help families deal with that whole ball of tangled emotion?
Those are really challenging situations. Again, I've been doing this a long time, and I have, especially when I was in family care, but I've seen it even since then. But I would see people who were living with dementia and were living in an independent type of living situation in the home, senior living, whatever, and we're struggling to get through. We would see behavior, we would see communication challenges, we would see medication administration issues. And when they were moved to a more supportive environment, they almost seemed to improve, because they were getting the support that they needed. They were getting their medications on time. They were able to use their cognitive abilities to do the things they wanted to do and the things that were important to them. And then that support then was filling in those things that they were working so hard to keep up. So I talk to families about that, really how from that person living with dementia standpoint, that confusion and the amount of energy that it takes for that person just to get through their daily routine is exhausting, and can really make that person seem like they're worse than they really are. The other thing that I really try and listen for is where that person living with dementia is at in regards to recognizing their surroundings and who's caring for them. And just on a personal note, my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's disease, and she was living in the home that she raised her family in. She lived in for 53 years. And my husband's one of 5. So we were rotating when we would be there. We were recognizing she was needing some help. And somebody was there every night to have dinner with her. And we'd gotten to the point where people were with her pretty much all the time. And we went over this was in January, beginning of February, we went over for our regular Tuesday night dinner. And my niece, who was in nursing school, had been there with her during the day and literally had left like 20 minutes prior. And we got there and she was frantic. I'm so glad you're here. I was just getting ready to leave. I got to go home. I don't know where I'm at. And we went through this thing with her where my husband was saying, Mom, you are home. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. And then we would get her calmed down and we would have dinner. We ate a little bit. And then she would look at me and say, I know it's out of your way, but can you take me home on your way home? And I'm texting my husband saying, we can't leave her tonight. She has now hit that threshold where she doesn't recognize her surroundings. And so we had to band together and we were with her 24 hours a day until we could get her into a memory care facility. And she has flourished. She has done so well. She perked up. She's made friends. She's funny. I mean, she has always been super, super sweet, but she was a caregiver. She took care of her kids and everything was all about them. So she had the bit of anxiety and now she's funny and she's silly and we have a blast. So it's helping families understand that by moving your loved one to a more supportive environment or adding that additional home care or whatever the case may be, you're actually giving them a gift because you're helping reduce their anxiety. You're helping provide the structure that they need so that they can use their energies to be as independent as they can possibly be. Long answer to your short question.
But you know what, it's fabulous because that was our experience with Mom as well. And we all felt guilty. She loved where she was. She was playing golf, popcorn with the neighbors, but she was struggling, to your point, and simply could not be alone. We brought in nurses for a couple of different nurses, Nurse Ratchet and Nurse Natter, as I wrote about in the book. And that was okay for a very short period of time. But to your point, once we got our mind wrapped around the fact that she actually would perhaps enjoy where she was rather than worrying about, is she in the right place? Did she miss something? That was important. If we could, I'd like to shift gears just a bit. My story is as a child of a parent. I've talked a lot recently with elderly couples who are brokenhearted. And I saw this with my own parents at the thought of separating from their spouse. And yet, one woman I talked with just a couple of weeks ago, she said, I'm just exhausted. She said, not only am I losing my husband, she said, I have to pay the bills. I have to take care of the yard work. I have to manage car maintenance. She said, I have to do things I don't even know how to do. But she's not yet ready to change their situation. How do you advise people in that kind of situation?
Susan, I'm seeing a lot of that, actually, a lot more couples, used to be the opposite. I used to see more wives taking care of taking care of their husbands. Now I'm seeing more husbands taking care of their wives. And yeah, you're right. That struggle of what can we do and how can we add help and yet being so overwhelmed with just getting through the day to day. I talk to people about the importance of a support network, the importance of adding help wherever you can, who's in your circle, who is important in your life, who's been important in your loved one's life. And I really try and talk to them about the gift that they're giving their loved one living with dementia by including other people. I mean, so often when I'm working with couples, I hear things like, I don't want to bother my children. They have enough on their plate. I don't want to bother my friends from church. They're doing their own thing. And so I turn that around and I try and focus on that person living with dementia and what a gift they're getting by bringing these other people back into their lives or adding, that extra time of those individuals, but also what those other individuals are getting from spending time with that person living with dementia. Like I talked about my mother-in-law, like I've always adored my mother-in-law. I literally have always said I have the best in-laws. They were terrific. And just that time, you know, when we go visit her and laughing with her and singing old songs, and I get something from that. She does, but I also get something from that. And so I try and very much focus on that, like that gift that you're giving to your loved one living with dementia. The other thing I talk about is, you know, I have them go through as the caregiver, what are all the tasks you're doing? Like you named, well, I'm the financial planner, I'm the housekeeper, I'm the cook, I'm the yard maintenance. And literally sometimes we're writing them down. Like, this is everything you're doing. That's a lot. No wonder you're feeling overwhelmed. What can we easily take off your plate? And so I'll have them think about that. Sometimes I have caregivers literally like write down a list. Here are the things that I could use help with. And then when somebody says, hey, Joe, I'd really like to help you, you can say, pick something. Would you like to pick something? These are the things that I could really use help from or help with. And I think that helps, because it's hard for all of us to ask for help, especially caregivers. You know, they're doing it all. But by allowing that person to pick, it feels, I think, less like you're putting upon those individuals.
That is such a fantastic idea. And what you're doing is really bringing a community together to people who care, right? It's when you're in a caregiver role, and I'm not in the spousal role, so I really can't speak to that too much. I think others here could, but there's that, no, I don't want to bother anybody. And you know what, this is my responsibility and I got this. And it can be embarrassing to admit that's what's going on is scary. It's confusing. And I don't really know what to do. We don't typically go out and say, hey, I'm scared, I'm confused, I have no clue what to do. And yet that's the smartest thing, to do it in whatever way opens people to receiving help. I love the idea of talking about gifts, about really sharing time that makes everybody not only feel better, but get some rest once in a while. And again, the reassurance factor, right, is that you cannot be as effective as you truly want to be unless you figure out how you're going to do the little R word, which is rest. Your sound is a little bit funky right now. I don't know what's happening with that, but as I often say, I could talk to you for hours. I do want to open it up to the people who are with us to ask a question, to make a comment, to share a story. So whoever is ready, please unmute and say hello to Jen.
So hi, Jennifer. So I want to just make a quick comment and then have you follow up. So one of the things that I have discovered over the years with caregivers is, and you alluded to it, and you talked about it for a bit, which is not asking for help, and the expressing fear, expressing anxiety, makes them feel like they are either complaining or diminishing that I'm honored to be caring for this person that I adore, or maybe I don't adore them, but I'm still, this is part of who I am and who they are, and this is what I owe to them in a loving way. And yet they can't express how fearful it is about what does this look like? How am I managing this? Am I doing enough? I'm never doing enough, all of that. And so if you could speak to that. I mean, I've talked with so many families and so many individuals in those settings, and trying to validate that they actually have a right to a life also, despite being a caregiver. That doesn't mean you can't go do things and have joy in your life separate from the person that you're caring for. Your take on that, please.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I especially see that and kind of what you're alluding to, Adele, I especially see that with married couples, right? That there's vows on each other. I talked to a gentleman yesterday who was referred to me by one of my colleagues because he's taking care of his wife. And he mentioned to her that he's depressed, and she thought maybe he could benefit from some caregiver support. So we were talking, and he said, you know, this is the vow that I took. And I'm going to do what it takes to take care of her. And in talking with him, he really, I think, is managing well. He's surrounded himself with care. He's got home care in, she's on hospice, so he's got a hospice agency in, he's got family coming in and providing some extra support. He's taking some time for himself, but he's committed to keeping her at home. And so I think there's a couple of different situations. There's the one situation where I made a vow, I'm going to do this. I'm the only one who can do this because I'm the one who can do it the best. And then there are the people who can kind of step outside of that and surround themselves with care. One of the things that I say to caregivers is that although it might feel like adding help is being less supportive of giving up your independence or your role, it actually is going to help you be that caregiver longer. So you're going to be more successful at keeping your loved one at home or in their current situation if you add help now, because that's going to give you that support and that break and that respite, as well as picking up some of the pieces. So trying to help people kind of wrap their head around the benefits of adding help and support, and that it's not that you're not fulfilling that promise by adding help, that you're actually, again, kind of going back to that giving that gift, you are supplementing what you're doing, you're adding additional help, and what a great gift that is for that person and for you.
So Jennifer, a follow-up question to that is adding, yes, making a list of the help, like you said, the things that I do, things that I might need help with. Do you refer people to specific resources, home care, cooking, transportation? And if so, how do you vet the people that you recommend to your caregivers?
Yeah, wow. So I do not have the ability to vet the resources. We have, if you're familiar with the Aging Disability Resource Center in Waukesha County, we have a great resource guide, which I wish I had one so I could hold it up. It's got a lot of resources in it, but we don't have the manpower and the ability to vet. And quite frankly, even if we vet it today, does that mean that those organizations or those companies are going to have the same quality a month from now, a year from now? What we do is educate consumers and educate family members to ask the questions. I have a list of questions that I give family members or caregivers when they're contacting home care agencies or when they're contacting care facilities. And I really am heavy on the dementia questions, like what kind of staff, what kind of dementia training does your staff have? What does that look like? Is that here's a topic sheet on dementia when you hire them? Or is that a 2-hour session when they're hired? Or is it a once a month training? And through my experience, I do know home care agencies and facilities out there that have embraced the training and provide the training. And so I can't refer only to certain organizations, but I definitely provide the tools for the consumers and the caregivers to be savvy and to ask the questions. If my loved one has a behavior challenge, if they become anxious, how would you handle that? What does that look like? How would your staff respond? Those kinds of things. So it's giving people the tools to kind of weed out and find what meets their needs.
I really appreciate that answer, because oftentimes we can suggest to people, as well as I, that there is such a big personality issue here that can be changeable day to day, hour to hour, every 10 minutes, right? So to provide resources to help them understand the questions to ask and who to be thinking about, I think is absolutely superb. So thank you for that honesty. And again, that honest response to people it creates the platform for trust, right?
Absolutely. And I think what I cherish and what I'm looking for, what I think is important to my loved one, can be completely different from what you're looking for and what's important to your loved one. So I encourage them, if you're looking for a care facility, what does your loved one enjoy? What are some of the things that you think he or she might enjoy doing? What's important to them? Does your mom want to go and have her hair done? Is there a beauty salon? Will they do her nails? Will they let her volunteer? Will they come up with things that she can do, to be engaged, to feel useful and purposeful? So it's different for each person, what's really important.
So many questions, so many resources. I want to open it up again to anyone who has a question or a comment for Jennifer.
Well, hi Jennifer again. I will just add a comment. We've been on our journey for almost 10 years now. And it was really tough in the beginning, and we involved the Aging Disability Resource Center and the Senior Health Center at Pro Healthcare for, we had to be strategic, or I'm the daughter-in-law, so I started seeing things, and I just became administrative assistant and took my mother-in-law to her appointments and asked for some screenings, and it wasn't easy in the beginning. It was actually really tough. And now 10 years in, she is in a place where she's safe, but every day there's a new challenge. And so we've talked about those things, and I appreciate talking about, identifying what makes your parent or your loved one feel safe and secure and involved and in control, whatever that may be. And it's, I think, easier for me as the daughter-in-law, and I'm not the child. But the five kids have come a long way, and while it was just me and then my husband, now it's the four others in the family that are involved as well. Even her siblings didn't think we knew what we were talking about 10 years ago. Oh, she's fine. Well, we knew she wasn't fine, but there are ways to get around showing people your true self. And she was really good. She continues to be really good at it. She's 89. So we're just really grateful that we've had these 10 years where we know that she's safe. And I guess I encourage people just to think out of the box and to ask for help and to know you can't be it all, and to forgive yourself if things do happen along the way where one falls and breaks her hand and has to have surgery. And that was me on my watch. But just to move forward and be grateful for the time that we have with those we love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to your point, Renee, I think families, I've worked with people who are an only child and they're in it alone and they're so frustrated and they wish they had support. And then I've worked with families where there's 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 kids, and one of them is saying, I wish I was alone. I wish I could make all the decisions. Because sometimes, yes, Susan, because sometimes that complicates things. But you're doing the best that you can. And that's what I say to caregivers, like, what works today, you may find something that works today, and know that may not work tomorrow. And it's not because that you've done anything wrong. It's just the nature of the disease, or what doesn't work today may work tomorrow. You have to be kind to yourself. You have to give yourself some grace, because it is one challenging disease. And I've also had caregivers say, kind of to your point, when, why is it that my mother-in-law or my loved one is fine when she talks to some people, and then when I'm with her, she's so confused. She rises to the occasion. And that's so hard for caregivers. I met with a couple last week, and the wife I had talked to, and she was talking about all the struggles she's having, and then we met, and he rose to the occasion. Her husband rose to the occasion, and she's like looking at me as I'm leaving, and I'm like, I got this. I got it. I understand. And she called me the next day, like, am I losing my mind? And I'm no, it's clearly there. He just covers really well. So.
Well, I also find that what we saw early on is that, you know, everybody compensated for her and answered questions. They would ask a question, and if she would fail to respond quickly, they would fill in the blanks. So it really gave her the opportunity to, you know, give the false sense of reality.
Mm-hmm. Or cover with humor. I've seen that too, you know, laugh it off, or yeah.
Yep, totally.
I think the themes that are coming out in this conversation are the same ones we've had all along. And Renee, I loved what you said, you know, forgive yourself. We are all human. We are all struggling. Some days we do really, really well. And other days it's like, oh man, beat me up, Scotty. I just completely blew that. That's the nature of this. And really the reason why we are coming together for these compassion chats is because it's easy to feel like you're the only one who doesn't know how to do this well. Or you're the only one who maybe lost your cool and said something that, you know, half hour later, you're like, ah, geez, probably not helpful. But that's the nature of this. So thank you. I appreciate that. And the other thing you said that I think is absolutely essential is appreciating, enjoying the time we do have. As difficult as it can be, as irritating sometimes as it can be, it's, you know, the days go by quickly. And 10 years is a long journey, but it's time.
One of the things, oh, go ahead. One of the things that that we're kind of talking about is, you know, as far as giving yourself, being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace is one of the things that I do is teach a caregiver class, a 6-week caregiver class. And the first time I taught it, I had a woman who came in, it was the 3rd or the 4th week, and we were really getting into the nitty gritty of caregiving. And she came in crying. She was taking care of her husband, and she blew it. She said, I totally blew it. I lost my cool with him. I understand. I know what you've taught. I know what I should be doing, but I lost my cool. And I said to her, okay, stop right there. Just because you're going through the class, just because you're learning doesn't mean that you're always going to do the right thing. That's not the expectation. It's not that you're perfect. What we hope is that when you have a speed bump, when you have a challenge, that you're able to sit back and reflect on that and think, that's what the problem was. Next time I can do this. So the expectation by teaching caregivers and by helping them through this process, it isn't that they become perfect caregivers. It's that they have the knowledge that they need. And if they don't have the knowledge that they need, that they know where to go to get the resources, to get the information, to get the support. Because like you said, Susan, they're not alone. There are 10,000 individuals turning 65 every day. So we have a lot of people that are aging in, that are needing the support, and that are caring for their loved ones. And there's a lot going on.
Well, and I can speak for those who are aging, and y'all, but certainly for the caregivers that we've been collecting and caring for. You, like so many we've had, are an angel on earth. And we're so, so grateful for the work that you do and for coming and really sharing your knowledge and your encouragement for us with us this evening. I'd like to thank everybody who's with us. And just mention that next month, November 23rd, our guest will be Gary Barg. Gary is the CEO of Caregiver Media Group out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's been doing this for 30 years, I think he said. So a very, very interesting conversation. And I also want to remind everyone that you can see this recording again with Jennifer and all of our guests at susanamarshall.com. You can go there to register for the next session as well. And, oh yes, to find your copy of Mom's Gone Missing. I also want to just take a second to share with you exciting news that Mom's Gone Missing reached #5 on Amazon Kindle just this past week. So very proud of that, and really gratified, because that means we are helping more people to just do exactly what you've said, Jennifer and Renee and Adele. You know, give yourself some grace. This is a tough journey. You are up to it. You are not alone. There's a whole bunch of us here who want to help and support you. So thanks again, everybody, for being with us. We'll see you next month. Jennifer, you're wonderful.